Hello, friends. I'm Kerry Farr. Welcome to In Your Corner. Boy, we've got a great show for you today and next week. All of my boxing buddies from Middle Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee are with me today. Let me go around the table and introduce them real quickly. We're going to talk boxing this week and next week. On my immediate right, Mr. Don Hale, who is an extraordinary boxing manager. He managed the career of Frankie Randall, and you guys went out and beat the great Julio Cesar Chavez when he was 89-0. Congratulations, you made a lot of money, and you don't have any left. That's why you're back, but we're glad to see you on the program today.
That's everybody in boxing.
That's everybody.
Same old song and dance.
Next to Don over here is Jonathon Reid, one of the original Contender stars, and not only a Contender star, but he was a contender for William Joppy for the middleweight championship of the world. Now let me go back in this direction. To my left, Keith McKnight, former heavyweight contender, finished with a record of 44-4, knocked out two former world champions, Iran Barkley and J.B. Williamson. And then next to him, we would probably call this man Jerome Kid Coffee, the dean of boxing in Nashville, Tennessee. This man was one of the most, decorated amateurs in the history of boxing. I was there in 1980 when you fought Richie Sandoval in Atlanta at the Olympic trials, fought Jeff Finnick for the championship, trained Scotty Bulldog Olson, Jerome Coffee. And then sitting next to him, Kenny Saylors. Kenny K.O. Saylors is a film producer, and, he and his brother are award-winning film producers, and Kenny has done some amazing videos with, some of the top rap stars in the world, and we'll let these guys share a little bit of their story on this program, but next week we'll let them share a lot more. I want to just, talk with you for a moment about something that happened. I had the privilege of managing Keith's career from the time he was an amateur, just a teenager, when he came into the gym throughout his professional boxing career. And we traveled all over the country together. And over the course of, 20 years in boxing together, we met so many wonderful people from every, ethnicity and every culture. And I remember when he first started, after he'd been boxing a couple of years, we brought in a Puerto Rican trainer by the name of Benito Ortiz, who had run the famous Times Square gym in New York for 30 years. He'd been, in the same stable as former world champion Emil Griffith, was managed by Gil Clancy, and we brought him in. He was of African descent, but he was from Puerto Rico. But he was a tremendous trainer, taught Keith how to move. He called it Spanish dancing. Mm-hmm. But this guy came and lived with us and, stayed with us, stayed in our home with us. And then years later, we brought in the great Luther Burgess, who was an African-American from Detroit, happened to be Eddie Futch's first fighter back in the 40s. And we got to love these guys. They were just like family. And Keith came to me one day and he said, Kerry, I think it's impossible to be in boxing and be racist. And that had a tremendous impact on me. And he told me that over 20 years ago. But, the reason for that, Keith, I'll let you expand on that, was because we'd grown to love these people and we knew that we were all the same, right?
Right. There's no doubt. When you're in a gym, a boxing gym, I don't know, it's different from being on the street. You can just say things straight out, because guys don't get their feelings hurt. But when you share and you sweat and you bleed together and you work hard together, you just form a bond. And, you just realize that they're no different than you, Everybody's the same. Everybody's got the same goal. So you just work together and you realize that everybody's the same.
Yeah. And Jerome, I don't have the same experiences that you do because I grew up different, Tell us, some of the maybe challenges you had growing up in America.
Well, as a Black American, the first thing you learn is there are do's and don'ts. And when it's like me, when I teach my kids, they're Canadian, but when they come to America, I tell them that they can't do a certain few things. And if the police stop them, a certain few things that they have to do, they have to be smart about, because we're not treated quite the same. Right. So if you don't know that, then you get surprised, and it could cost you your life. Mm-hmm. So for me, I've always been aware, and I'm 62 years old now, and I'm still aware that, people say it's changed, but it hasn't changed that much. You can still get killed if you don't have your hands on the steering wheel when the police pull you over.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So you get Jonathan. You speak to that yourself, because obviously you've experienced some of that yourself.
Yes, sir. Coming up, my father taught us, my older brother and I, if you ever get pulled over by the police, you put your hands on the steering wheel, or if he's driving. If he was driving and he got pulled over, he would have us put our hands on the dashboard. So just leave your hands on the dashboard, and Daddy will take care of the rest. You have to. He taught us how to be respectful, even if you came across an officer that wasn't being respectful. Calling you out of your name or something like that. You still had to be respectful. And then he said, get mad when you drive away. So
get home.
When you get home, then you can get mad about something. My dad had a heavy bag hanging in the garage, and he said, whenever you get mad, if you need to go in the garage, just come down here and ask me for the key. You go in there and hit the bag. But that was one of the things that helped me coming up. If I got mad at something or got mad at somebody, you go out there and hit the bag.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And fellas, I say, I don't have the same experiences, because, when I was born in Alabama, my dad moved to Detroit when I was a kid, mm-hmm. And the one thing I do remember was, because I was a kid from Alabama, the black kids would chase me home from school because of where I was from, because of the way their people have been treated down south, mm-hmm. But I remember a police officer stopping me, Keith, in Laverne, Tennessee one night. And when I was young, I would get mouthy with these guys, and I learned as I got older, yes sir, no sir. Mm-hmm. But this guy stopped me, and I started arguing with him. He reached for his pistol, and I said, "Well, you better just shut up." Yeah. And I learned. So, Don, let me go to you, and then I want to go to Kenny, because Kenny's worked in a culture, and we'll let him talk about that in a minute, But we know that, you're a man that brought in Floyd Mayweather Jr., the great Money Mayweather. He was Pretty Boy Floyd in the early days. But you brought him into your home, and he actually lived with you.
Well, Kerry, I grew up in southeast Missouri. I grew up 10 miles outside of a town of 3,000 people. And by the time I was 6, 7 years old, we were chopping cotton and picking cotton, and sometimes we were with African Americans. There was a lot of racist people around as I was growing up. And we didn't, until I was in the 8th grade, they brought some blacks into school. And I got to be friends with some black people. And they were very segregated. The ones that played sports, when the game was over, they bust them back out to, where they lived out in the country. I don't remember blacks being in my hometown after dark.
That's right.
I'm sure, maybe it did, but I don't remember that. So
even in Missouri,
Missouri. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But my brother went to college, and I can remember so well me talking about, and I don't know how old I was, maybe 11, 12 years old, maybe 13, and something about blacks, and it was a race. I was saying something racist, and he said, "Let me ask you something, Don." And I was a big baseball fan now, loved the Cardinals. He said, "If Curt Flood asked you to come have dinner with him, would you do it?" Why, sure I would.
Yeah.
What's the difference? And that got me to thinking. And and racism to me is ignorance. I grew up ignorant to racism and what blacks would go through. And as I matured and I started having friends that was black, as I went to college, I had friends that was black. It got to where it was no difference. And then when Floyd, I love Floyd like he's one of my kids. And when Floyd came and lived with us, I saw what he was going through. I saw cops stop him on the street because he has a nice coat on. I saw my wife would take him shopping, and she talks many times about, how they would, the people would come over that were working there because he would always walk ahead of her, just like our own kids did. But they would go to him as soon as he walked in. But then as soon as she walked over, all of a sudden they relaxed. So we saw what Floyd was going through. And then, of course, with Nate Jones. Nate Jones grew up in Cabrini Green in Chicago. And, the conversations I've had with Nate grew up not trusting white people. Nate looked up to the drug dealers. He looked up to the pimps. And that's what he grew up with. And as he came, and he didn't live with us, but he was, like a son to me, and we still talk on a regular basis. I think he changed. I saw change in Nate, like I changed at a young age. And to me, that's what it's all about. Is whenever we get together, and I don't. When I look at Jonathon Reid, I don't see a black man. I've known Jonathon for years.
Gray-headed man.
That's right. He's a I don't think of it in those terms, but back where I grew up, people didn't look at it the same way as what we do today, and what the people that have been educated and learned that I can love a black man. I don't care if you're purple. And I always say, if you treat me with respect, I don't care if you're purple or red or whatever color you are. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. And Kenny, you've worked deep in the African American culture and the rap culture. Tell us your experiences.
Well, it's kind of funny because my brother and I were two white guys from Texas. We were born and raised in Texas, and so when people find out that we were really worked deep within the rap culture, people are always like, "Whoa!" We're like, "Well, it's like that was what came in our lap, and we became great friends with these guys, and it's funny, we used to sit around and have all these conversations. A lot of times, everybody, because you could be real with them, there was no pretend, you could sit down and everybody just had a conversation. You could have real conversations, and it was amazing because we grew up in West Texas, and I think we had one black family in our town out in West Texas, and I was friends with the guy. He was a great guy, great athlete, and so I aspired to be like him because he was so good. And then we ended up moving to another place, and my best friend in high school, he was a black guy, and so I never had this real skewed view. I never really thought about it. I just thought, those are my friends. I didn't. And so even then, when we fell into the rap music world, it was funny because we went around and everybody called us the white guys. We were the two white guys. And in fact, we had gotten to the point where one time we were sitting around in D.C. at a party with the Rough Riders and all the East Coast rapper guys, and we were sitting around at a birthday party. My brother and I looked at each other and said, "You know what? We need to go meet some white people. We don't know any white people anymore." We're like, we just realized that. Like, man, and they kind of looked at us the same way, but because sometimes we were in a lot of unsavory neighborhoods during that time, and they would come out and have to protect us because we were like. We'd have the guys coming going, "Yo, man, what are you doing over here?" And we're like, "We're them," and so, but it was interesting in all these conversations. I'll never forget one in particular. I had a really nice car, and had some cool rims, really dark tint, and I was coming over to Nashville quite a bit, and so I would drive between Nashville and Memphis. And every time I made that stretch of highway, I got pulled over by the DEA. They had their little black SUV sitting out there. They just pulled me over every single time. I get out, they'd make me get out, and they'd search my car and all that stuff. And one day I asked them, I said, "Why you do it?" They said, "Well, you drive a car that looks like a drug dealer." And I'm like, "Really?" So I was telling that to one of my buddies who's a black guy, and I was telling him, I said, "Dude, they pull me all the time." He goes, "Man, that's my life." And I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "That's my whole life." Because he drives a nice car. I always called him a white black guy because he dressed so nice. Everything. Always teased him with that. And he goes, "But man," he goes, "it doesn't matter." He goes, "Because everywhere I drive, because I have a nice car, because they pull me over and go, 'So how did you get this car?' and all that." And I was like, "Really?" And that was, even after all these years being, realizing, I'm like, man, I was like, it's crazy how. Culturally, that is become that way. But as a white guy, I don't really think about it. I get annoyed by it. I'm like, hey, man, okay. And so I understand that. And but it's one of those things that as we now where we are in our culture, it's funny because I start realizing, man, I've lived a really blessed colorblind life because I really never thought about it. And actually, I think about it more now than even ever before because of everything going on, and that's a good thing because it makes you think about, okay, these are my guys. I treated them this way, but not everybody has, and I've got a bond. They're family to me, but not everybody in the world views it that way, and so it's just been kind of an eye-opening thing in our culture, especially in the last several years, to realize the battle that's going on that exists, but how we can all work together because we're all brothers. I mean, I mean, it's like. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand racism. I think it's ridiculous. But I can see it. I can see how it exists.
Yeah. Now, Jerome, you fought at the highest level in boxing. I mean, both in the amateur ranks, in the professional ranks. You went to Australia. You fought Jeff Fenech for the championship of the world back when men were men and had to fight 15 rounds.
15 rounds.
And you went 15 rounds, and actually it was a very close fight, and you thought you won. Did you ever experience racism in boxing, do you think?
Oh, I remember from the beginning when I first started,
was it here in Nashville in those days?
I fought I won't call his name, but I fought a gentleman here in town that turned out to be a really good fighter, and he actually says, well, I'm gonna fight him. I'll fight him. I won't fight him. He weighs 5 pounds more. He's 5 pounds lighter. I'll fight him, which was me. So Anthony Murray was the guy that he was scheduled to fight, but he was 5 pounds heavier. I was 5 pounds lighter. Let's fight him. So I go in and I fight this guy, and sure enough, I win. And they actually give me the decision, and which was surprising. And so the people booed like it was going out of style. I was a young guy, and the referees turning us around, and they were booing. So I stuck my tongue out. I didn't know. And so we get ready to leave. We go to get out in the car, and we're surrounded. The car's surrounded. And Bob Dixon, Dickie Doo was my trainer.
Wow.
And he had to pull his pistol out to get us out of the parking lot.
Because people got so upset over you.
I had no idea. And he never gave me the blues about it because, I mean, he was a part of the ride, I guess. And I thought to myself that was as scary a situation that had happened to me early in my life. I just had no idea that people would get so offended.
I had a white guy that I managed by the name of Tim Johnson. We called him Scrap Iron because he was so scrappy. And I had him in a world title fight in Recife, Brazil. We're fighting in a bull ring. And he's fighting some guy down there by the name of Toto Duro. And I don't remember what it's total. I don't remember what it's.
Bull.
Yeah, Strong Bull or something like that. And Timmy's trying to act like Muhammad Ali, sticking his tongue out at this guy. He's shaking his butt. And this bull ring is full of thousands of people, and they start throwing oranges into the ring and start throwing cups. I said, would you behave yourself? You're going to get us killed. And, and he just couldn't help himself. He kept doing it. And on next week's show, I'll tell you another interesting story about him. But anyway, he gets into the 7th or 8th round, gets a real bad cut. I thought he was winning the fight. They stopped the fight. And all of those Brazilian people treated him like he was a rock star after it was over. You would not have believed. So they weren't mad at him, Jerome. They thought it was kind of interesting.
But if he got the decision, it'd been a little bit different.
Exactly.
He got the decision.
He came out with the win. It'd been a little bit different.
We were in a market over there, and he was running his mouth. And Jimmy, if you're watching, we love the way you did it. You and J.R. Spears were the best. But he's running. This guy gets a meat cleaver and comes after us with a meat cleaver in this market, because you American, and stuff. But Jonathon, how about you? What have you experienced, as far as, growing up in America?
Well, as far as the boxing is concerned, a week before I turned pro, I needed some money, and my coach Eddie Rochelle, he found out about a tough man contest in Glasgow, Kentucky. He called me. He said, "Son, what are you doing?" I said, "Nothing, man. What's going on?" He said, "Come on, we're getting ready to go to this tough man contest. So we drove to the tough man contest. And when I get in there, I mean, the gym is full. I'm the only black guy in there. So in tough man contest, you know how they go. You got to fight 3 1-minute rounds, and whoever wins, and then they go on to the next thing. So I was doing that. I fought 3 fights already. After my
Obviously, you had won all 3 of them.
I won all 3 of them. So after my 3rd one, I went back to sit down where Eddie had me sitting. From me walking from the ring to where I had to sit, they was calling my name again. I said, man, I just got out of there. They want me to go back in there.
So they're doing a number on you.
Yeah, Eddie goes, son, I want to tell you something. I said, what? He puts his other hand on my shoulder. He said, you're black.
Oh, really?
I was like, really?
That's a surprise.
So when I walked to the ring for the next fight, I walked to the ring, and they had like the front row here. I had to turn to the left to get inside the ring in the corner I was in. When I got to the stairs to walk up to the ring, it was an older guy sitting on the front row, and he had a styrofoam cup. He was spitting tobacco in it. He looked at me. He said, hey, you getting ready to get your behind whooped now, boy. And he spit in the cup. I looked at him, I said, yes, sir. And I went in there. I'm hitting this kid with everything but the kitchen sink in the face. And he wasn't going anywhere. Ooh. I said, great day in the morning. All right. So I go back to the corner, and Eddie goes, man, hit him in the body. I said, all right. So the kid threw a little wild right hand because, he really didn't know how to box because I knew how to box a little bit. I leaned over there and caught him with a body shot. Ooh. He went down. And when he went down, I looked out to the guy that spit in his cup before I got in the ring and winked at him.
That's the best way to get even.
Yeah, but that was the fun part of it. I don't think I really dealt with racism to an extreme extent. A lot of times, me and my coach we would joke around, like we were driving somewhere. We would get somewhere to get some gas, and before we got out the car, he would say, "All right, son, listen, this place looks kind of rough." I said, "All right, Eddie, this is what you do. When we go in, if anything goes down, I am your slave." And we were joking.
Make a joke out of it.
Yeah, make a joke out of it, man. So we get out of there.
Well, fellas, we're running short of time. I'll let you guys speak a lot more on the next program, but I want to just kind of address this for a moment, folks. Racism is not a skin problem; it's a sin problem. Mm-hmm. And I had the privilege of sitting underneath the great Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker. And Zig said that he was born in Alabama, raised in Mississippi, and both of those states were pretty well known as, states that were prejudiced or racist. And Zig said, but he never was racist because his mother opened up the Bible when he was a boy and opened over to Acts and said in Acts 17:25, it says, neither is worship with men's hands as though he needeth anything, seeing God giveth to all life and breath and all things. And verse 26 says, and hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all of the face of the earth. So basically what the Bible is saying is that God made us all from one blood. Mm-hmm. So we're all ultimately, brothers. And so when I became a Christian, I became colorblind. And Jesus said in John 13:35, he said, to you, Christian brother and Christian sister, he said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. So today, with all of this stuff going on in our world, I want to say that, I want people, if I'm arrested as a Christian, I want there to be enough evidence to convict me. And I want to love my brother and my sister like Jesus loved them. And I want to just point out the bigger picture. over in Revelation chapter 13, the Bible talks about a man who's the Antichrist that's going to come up on the world scene, and he's going to take over the entire world. There's going to be a one world government. And the Bible predicted over 2,000 years ago that if you did not receive a mark in your right hand or on your forehead, you would not be able to buy or sell. I don't have time to go through the book today, but go to Revelation chapter 13. It's back there. This is called the mark of the beast, and we see people trying to implement this today. Mm-hmm. So when you see all of these riots going on in America and around the world today, what they're trying to do is these are people that are called globalists that are trying to set up a one world government. And the only way they can set up a one world government is to destroy the United States of America. And America has this thing called a constitution that keeps them from doing that. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to destroy America and set up a one world government. It's going to happen. I believe that the church, Christians, will be gone prior to that in a thing called the rapture, but it's going to happen. But we're trying to fight it and trying to avoid it. But a globalist and the globalist agenda is a plan to bring all of Earth's inhabitants under the control of a single global state. And there is a small but powerful group of people who are the architects and instigators behind the formation of the New World Order. You even heard George Herbert Walker Bush, the first Bush that was president, say, we're bringing a new world order. There are people that are globalists that are trying to destroy America. So let's not be a part of that. Let's love our brother. Let's love our sister. And gentlemen, we've got about a minute left. Let's just go around the table real quick. 10 seconds. Tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, just love one another, like you said. It's not a black and white thing. You got to get rid of the labels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The media is trying to divide everything. It's not black man gets shot or white man gets shot. It's just a man gets shot or a man gets killed. You know, get rid of that.
10 seconds, then we got to close.
Let's make sure that we understand that when we bleed, we all bleed the same color.
That's right.
Amen.
So that's what we got to be conscious of.
Kenny, 10 seconds.
Oh, man. I hate the way our culture is turned with all this, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of hope in there because now people are uniting and starting to understand each other in ways we've never been able to understand before.
Amen.
I think that's the beauty of it.
Fellas, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to come right back and be on do a show for next week. Friends, we look forward to seeing you on the next show. If you want to hear more about these guys' stories and their careers, tune in again next week, same time, same channel, on the next edition of In Your Corner.